And welcome to the Barry Foster Show on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you that if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just put them in the comments below or drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Right here on the YouTube page, we're going to try to have programs up each and every weekday morning, Monday through Friday. And please like and subscribe. That would help so much. It'd be a great Christmas present. If you would like and subscribe, share this with your friends. And join us at the Barry Foster Show pages on Facebook and Instagram. That would help John Larsen in the studios this morning. Morning, John.
Good morning.
And, you know, we talked about a little bit about this yesterday. I suppose maybe we ought to enlarge about it today. And that is the fact that Zoran Mamdani and Donald Trump had a little get-together last week at the White House.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because, you know, Trump has a way of endearing himself to the enemy, okay? Mm-hmm. And he's already because Mamdani the Commie is what he calls him, okay? And Mamdani has called him a fascist and all this. So they've had these word salads going back and forth at each other. And so Mamdani called him because I think he came to the realization financially, the federal government gives New York City billions of dollars a year. And I don't think I can operate without that money.
To quote my sainted father, he's in the soup.
Well, I think he finally realized there's one thing in campaigning. You can say anything you want to get elected. Then it comes the governing part of it. You have to actually do the job.
Yes.
So we will see if he's going to be up to doing the job. I think he's biting off more than he's ever envisioned. And I think immediately he recognized, I have to have money.
The governor's kind of already told him, you're kind of on your own on this stuff. We're not going to be doing that much to help you out with this.
I don't trust Kathy Hochul as far as I can throw her. So I think whatever she can do to make him succeed, she's going to do it. She's going to do it. Now, just looking at some of this stuff, I mean, his tax plan, all right, he wants to raise $9 billion in annual revenue, his proposal, $4 billion from a higher tax rate, and $5 billion from a steep increase in corporate tax rate. If he enacts his tax rate from 3.9 to personal property or income tax to 5.9, and also the business corporate tax, the tax rate in the city and state taxes would be 16.7% you would have to pay out of your check. 16.7% out of your check for city and state taxes in New York.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, it's just been astonishing to me that they're not clamoring already, picketing City Hall saying, where's our free stuff? And again, if during the Thanksgiving holiday, if I find some kids that are socialists, I'm going to ask them, say, well, why aren't you on your way to New York? Why aren't you? This is going to be, you guys show us how it's done, please. Mm-hmm. Because every place that I've ever seen, and we started with the Pilgrims on, every place that I have tried socialism, it has been a horrible failure. So if you know how it's done right, well, my gosh, go and show us how it's done correctly. But we haven't seen many people in New York complaining that, of course, he hasn't taken over. He takes over in January 1st.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But it's surprising to me that the place isn't filling up. But getting back to this meeting, we didn't see very much about the meeting, but I did see Trump's little press conference where he was jibing the press, saying, I have world leaders in here, and you don't care about that. But this mayor of New York comes and he says, you can't find a place in here. He says, and we have people outside watching on a big widescreen TV watching this thing. And he's jiving with Mamdani. And it reminded me very much of when he went to North Korea with Kim Jong-un saying, I can see all along this shorefront, I can see condos, and McDonald's is one of, and he was just wooing him with capitalism. And that one news reporter asked Mamdani about calling Trump a fascist. And he's equivocating all over we're trying to find the places where we agree together, not the places that we disagree. And Trump bumps him on his shoulder, goes, just go ahead and say it. It's okay. Just go ahead and say it, and he's kind of kind of poking him a little bit. And I'm wondering what Mamdani's, and I have not seen what the socialists are saying is, has he sold out to Trump? Is he going to be a capitalist now? Is he selling out? Because they were smiling. He wasn't there pointing his finger and speaking truth to power,
Well, if you look at it, I did see a press conference that Mamdani had afterwards, of course, and and his side, all of the blue, green, white-haired women that voted for him, all right, which is really the ones that put him in office, was the female vote, upper class, middle class females, and so on. But the comments and that you're hearing from the pundits on the left are all saying that he bent the knee to Trump. Okay. He caved. That's what they said. He caved. All right. But again, I think he realized, he woke up after the election and said, okay, I won. Now I have to govern, and it's going to take gazillions of dollars, and the government gives me $500 gazillion. Where do I get it? I gotta make good with the guy that's going to give me the money or not give me the money.
Tax the rich.
That's right.
Tax the rich.
So we will see. But then conversely, you and I both know Trump has a major investment in New York City. He cannot afford to see the city fail, to go into a cesspool. It's already bad, but to go into an absolute cesspool where nobody wants to go to New York City, that impacts his business in New York City greatly.
What's the old song? Keep your friends close and your enemies even closer.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that one thing, America's under a number of attacks, and one is under what the Muslim Brotherhood calls the Civilization Jihad, which, and we've seen it happen in Minnesota. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they now believe that the New York is a Muslim city because they've elected a Muslim mayor, and so they're gonna try to push their agenda there. And I think that it's like a dog that was chasing the car and the car stops. Well, now what do? You caught the car. Now what? And Mamdani is in here now, and he's finding out, as you said, this is going to be a lot more difficult than making these wild promises that he made. And he's going to have to be nice. He's going to have to make nice with some people. That's what politics is all about, making nice with people you don't want to make nice with. But he's going to have to make nice with some of these people. And he did bend a knee to Trump. And I think Trump knows that he's got the upper hand, and he wants to protect not only his businesses, but other businesses. Mm-hmm. And Trump is, all things considered, a businessman. Mm-hmm. And he wants business to succeed. One of the reasons he doesn't want wars. Wars are bad for business. Not the military-industrial complex, but business in general. Right. And he wants business, he wants commerce in general to succeed. So now, when his working with Mamdani, how can he finesse this? How can he make things happen the way that he wants? And I think it's going to be a tough sell because, like you say, he's sold out. You know?
Well, let's face it. Trump controls the purse strings for Mamdani. Okay. I mean, he can get money from the state, yes, but the big money that he gets comes from the federal government, billions of dollars a year. All right. So he knows that he cannot survive, even with his radical program, he cannot survive without that federal money. So he has got to play his cards with Trump, knowing that that's the ultimate end. I mean, right? You got to have the money, baby. Otherwise you don't succeed.
And Trump, when he went in the first time, I just was reading a horrible article. I was reading it last night. It was really difficult to watch how some of Trump's appointees had either inadvertently or advertently helped to shut down his efforts to govern the country.
Yeah.
Okay. So now he's used to this. He's also used to the states taking some of this money and using it for stuff he doesn't want them to use it for. So he's now, I think, got the method down. So he's going to say, Mamdani, you can do this and this, but you can't do that.
Well, I think one of the things they talked about in the press conference where all the reporters were at was that number one, Trump says, you cannot let the crime go out of sight. You can't.
No.
He said, number one goal is you have to provide people with safety, and you can't allow the criminals to run the state. Because he had already said, I'm going to empty Rikers Island and put them on the streets. Well, if you do that on top of the crooks that are already bad guys that are already there, I mean, you're going to have a terrible situation. I mean, the murder rate's going to go sky high. The crime rate's going to go through the roof. So I think that, I believe now they said, yes, they both nodded their head on, not allowing crime to go crazy. We'll see what happens, because you can't put 6,000, 5,000 bad guys on the street and not expect something to happen.
And with all the cops leaving.
And the cops have said, yes, a number. They were already short over 2,000 police officers in New York. And now there's thousands of them that have already either tendered their resignation or going to retire. So this is just the beginning. And if he goes down, let's say another 2,000, they're short 4,000 cops. That's a huge number of people.
And social workers ain't going to make it.
They're not going to make it. You see a social worker go to a domestic dispute, because those are the worst.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens. Okay. There was a story. Where was it? This police officer, a female police officer, 25 years on servicing the police department in her community. I cannot remember the location now. She got a call to go to an eviction.
Yes.
Eviction. And the guy killed her, shot her and killed her. 25 years on the job.
I think it was in Broward County that happened.
Yeah. And it would, just, again, you would think, well, somebody says, oh, John, it's just an eviction call. It's not a bad deal. Yes, it is. It's just like a domestic call. It's terrible, because people are running on emotion at that point, and they'll do anything.
Our deputy here was killed going to a dispute over a cat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so his name just flew away at me.
Doty?
Yeah. He was going, and they said there's no such thing as a routine call. Domestic disputes are the worst. And New York has so many of the, how do I put this? Normal people have left.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people who are now voting him in are the people who want all this free stuff. They're the homeless who have, they're the people that's the reason they have to lock up the safety razors, You have to lock up all the goods and services, so you have to unlock them to buy them from the grocery market because they're stealing so much.
That's right. So I think it's the crime rate is going to be a big, big factor on whether or not they get along. Because if he turns the criminals out on the street and massive numbers of police leave the department and the crime rate goes through the roof, I think he and Trump are going to have a disagreement almost immediately.
Well, Trump has had a disagreement with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she was one of his great supporters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'll. Sometimes they want to try him and see whether he'll do what he says he's going to do, and he does. I mean, Donald Trump he has no hesitation, and I think that he is very much aware of not only this civilization jihad, what the Muslims have done. In fact, he said he's had enough. Enough is enough, and he has ended the deportation protections for the Somalis there in Minnesota. And they went in, and their version of Doge found millions in taxpayer revenue that was supposed to go to welfare, but that was sent to Al-Shabaab. And Al-Shabaab is not the most friendly group that you can imagine.
No, I mean, I've been following, there's a podcaster that I follow who has covered the Minnesota situation now for months. So I watch him regularly just to see how bad it gets. And finally, the feds finally got involved in Minnesota, I want to say 6, 8, 10 months ago. All right, right about the time that Trump took over, they finally started on the federal side investigating the corruption there. Mm-hmm. It is massive. You're talking billions of dollars. And a good portion of it, almost everybody that's been arrested is a Somali immigrant brought into the country by who? Joe Biden.
And the votes. I mean, under the Obama administration, I had a story. They would not show their face, and they kind of garbled their voice so they couldn't be traced. But under the Obama administration, there were Somalis who were showing up at people's houses and giving them votes and telling them who to vote for and how to sign it and taking them in. And they said, they showed up with guns. And these are people who are used to being ruled by men with guns. So filling that out, that was not a big deal to them. But this has been going on for a long time. And I think that and the unlimited warfare by Chinese that is everything from limiting of freedom of speech to making it more difficult to produce goods and services. The Chinese don't look at this war as soldiers marching against each other, as ships fighting it on the seas, people launching rockets. This is an economic and social war, and nothing's off the table. Nothing's off the table.
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing already, and it's going to continue to get worse as time goes on, and that is now you've got these communities that are run by Muslims. And the confrontation between the Christians and the Muslims is growing ever so much in this country. You got Dearborn, you've got Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now you've got New York, and you've got other places around the country where the Muslims have been able to win elected offices and taken power. And now what they're doing, they're beginning to force their religion on the people that they now are governing. And that is creating, they've had big demonstrations this past week in Dearborn because the mayor there of Dearborn is just a radical Muslim who has put all kinds of things, including the call to prayer 5 times a day. And it starts at 5 a.m. These sirens, and they played it it's horrible and whatnot. And they said, well, Christians have church bells. Yes, usually for the
not anymore.
No, or they have it when they have church. But I mean, they don't do it 5 times a day, and they don't do it at 5 a.m. Okay, so
I would challenge you to find a church here in Highlands County, which is in the buckle of the Bible Belt. I would challenge you to find a church that has bells that ring in the morning.
Not in the morning, but I do know the one on Sun and Lake, the church there on the circle at Sun and Lake, all right, does ring bells at noon.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. I've been there when it's happened. Yes, they do. They ring the bells at noon, I think, just to let people know that it's noontime. Okay, and whatnot. But anyhow, I think that is going to become a growing concern. And now that you've got this guy in New York City, he's going to promote the Muslim religion, face it, one way or the other, and so on. So
they have no problem with spreading the gospel.
But I think we're going to be headed towards confrontations, kind of like what's taking place in Europe. The Christians in Europe now are trying to take back, like England. They're trying to take it back because they want to save their heritage, which is disappearing because of the number of, and the government did this, brought massive numbers of Muslims into the country, into England and Europe.
Well, Spain did that with the Reconquista movement. And they threw them out, you know, but it was no small effort when Spain did this and reconquered their own Spanish lands. And I think it's going to be up to us to reinstate the United States was established as a Christian nation, and in fact, Western civilization is basically based on Christianity, and a lot of and Charlie Cook would talk about this at length about how the principles of American common law are based on Deuteronomy, and so and people don't realize this, you know, and it's going to be up to us to make them realize that this is a form of government made for a Christian people. And it's going to be up to us to first spread the gospel of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And this is the time of year they would do it. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year is really the time that we need to be bringing these when we have these family gatherings, friends and families, and inviting people to church to sit with us, inviting people to come and find a pastorate that they like. And because if we don't, they will. You know, nature abhors a vacuum, and it's going to be up to us to continue and to fight the good fight in terms of the tariffs, which were supposed to cause this Great Depression, have really brought a lot of money into the coffers. People said, well, tariffs, that's just a tax. Well, really, no. What the tariffs do is they bring the cost of those goods and services up even with us, because we are now forced to pay $15 an hour at the minimum wage. The very lowest wage is $15 an hour. So to make sure that, and these people, they're lucky to get $15 a day. Okay? So when you have to bring those costs up to be competitive with American goods, all you're doing is saying, look, we want to make sure that what you get made in China is going to cost you $10. You can get the same thing made in the United States for $10.
Well, I think, again, the idea was, and the Republican Party, if you will, and or previous Republican presidents never tried to go this route. They never did, and so on. So I think you've got a president now that said, look, we are being robbed, if you will, on our trade with country X. For years, for many, many years, decades, maybe many decades, we've been robbed because they charge us 15% on what goes into their country. And nice guys that we are, we either charge 2% or maybe 5%.
Or nothing.
Or nothing. And we've been getting hosed. And so finally you had a president that said, why are we losing billions of dollars every year to these countries, which is unfair? All we're asking for is fair fee. If you've got 15, we're going to charge 15. If you want to come down and charge 5 like we're charging, 5 is the number, and so on. So I think the more effort he puts into this, and he has a lot of it, he's had to backtrack. He just did last week on some things tariffs that were on food, because the cost of food in this country has really it is the hot button issue when it comes to elections right now. Okay. And food and fuel. Fuel has moderated and stays moderated for most of the time nowadays. Here in Highlands County, I don't understand what happens on Tuesdays, but it does, and so on. But food that's the hot button issue for people, is the cost of food, and so on. So I think you got to get it down. And last week he eliminated some tariffs that he had on food items coming into the country.
I would say one thing we need to do is begin to look to your local farmers markets, and buy local produce, buy as much locally as we can. And when it comes to buying things for Christmas, I will tell you that we used to have a fairly extended family. And the one thing that we used to have was we used to have the $2 Christmas. And then it went to $5. But you weren't allowed to spend any more than $5. And it could be something you found at a thrift shop, at a yard sale, something that you re-gifted. But it would be something that, that somebody arguably actually wanted. But we tried to keep it low. And I would say that you could probably have a $10 or $15 Christmas this year and try to make sure that whatever it is that you're buying was made in the United States. And there's madeinusa.com. There's a number of different places where if you're looking for some things that made in the United States, you can find made in the USA stuff at madeinusa.com. But I would say for Christmas, it is really, really important that we begin to look internally and buying maybe not everything, but some things to help to bring American goods back up again.
Well, I think that's part of it. And as you I know they're trying to bring businesses to restart, like you were saying, restart in this country, or to move to this country and start a business, which a lot of the foreign income, that's what they're going to build some kind of infrastructure. They're going to establish some kind of a plant or whatever, a business, and so on, and get American workers in there and get them working. And I think that's the big thing. You got to see job creation along with lower prices. And I think Trump has got maybe before next November, now we're almost exactly a year away from the election at midterm. I think you're going to see a lot of move in trying to do two things. Number one is get the cost of food down as quickly as possible. And the other thing is get as many jobs generated. They did, after the delay because of the shutdown, they did finally get the September job rate, which was like 115,000. And that was double. They only expected about 90 or less.
I think it was 55 and they got 119.
119. Yeah. So they did make improvements, and that was in September. So now we've got to play catch up with October. And then also shortly, we're going to have to get November's numbers.
Well, as the deportations increase, there'll be more job openings. And as people are going to start to need money, they can go here in Florida to their career source, wherever you are. If you're in DeLand, look up career source DeLand. If you're in Highlands, look up career source. But they'll get you to the place you need to be to help find a job to help pay for things. So I think that the ability to get jobs is going to come up. And I think that now after the first of the year, the midterms are going to be everything. And you're going to find a lot of these legislators are going to be very hopeful are going to be really, they couldn't help you enough because they're going to be up for re-election, or they know people that are up for re-election. In fact, I saw an article that said the DNC has taken out $15 million in loans, getting ready for the midterms, and they've raised their monthly contributions to the state parties because I think they know that this is going to be a tough sell for them. This is going to be a real tough sell for them.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the part of it is that how are they going to raise their money and so on. But just going back a little bit, trying to not backtrack, but talking about money, the city of New York, okay, in the last 10 years has lost outflow of income. In other words, people leaving the city, $517 billion worth of income has left the city of New York in the last 10 years. All right. In New Jersey, they've lost $170 billion in the outflow of people. New Jersey has actual higher taxes than New York City does.
Is that right?
So people in New Jersey and New York are flooding out of there and so on. And with someone like Mamdani going in, that could even accelerate. So what happens is when you lose your high income, what you have left are the people that live off of the government. So when it comes time for an election, I'm your guy. I'll vote for you because you're going to give me stuff. So we ask the questions, why do they keep reelecting these people? This is why. This is why. They get rid of the people that have the wherewithal to leave when they destroy a community. And what's there are the people that, I'll vote for you forever. To my dying day, I'll vote for you.
Well, what happens when they can't give them all the free stuff?
Well,
that's the question.
But they continue, though. You take a look at California, as bad as it is and has been over the many, many years now. The people that are there are the low income people, the influx of illegals and everybody else.
Except for Silicon Valley.
Well, yeah, they have that, but even some of them have moved their businesses out of the physical part of LA and other parts of California to, I don't know whether it's a better situation in Washington and Oregon, but I think some went to Utah and other parts of the country.
Well, it used to, back in the olden days when we went and saw movies, we noticed that a lot of the movies were shot in Canada. And I said, what the heck? Why are you shooting the movies in Canada? I said, because it's cheaper. Yes. It was cheaper to go to Canada to shoot the movies. So one of the reasons they set up Hollywood was because they had the great weather. They could have a Western or a moonscape or whatever kind of movie they were going to make. They could have it right there, but they went out of the country now because it was cheaper.
Well, that's, and I don't care what business you've got. It has to function based on the bottom line.
Yes.
If you don't have the income, you cannot stay in business. You cannot. Just look around the businesses that have collapsed within the last couple of years. Okay. They've collapsed because the cost of running them, California's a prime example, raised the minimum wage of fast food to $20 an hour. They went to 15 and that wasn't good enough. They went to 20. When they went to 20, 8,000 jobs were done away with immediately in fast food.
And no one is holding these people accountable. That's the thing, is that no one is going to Bernie Sanders and saying, well, you got your $15 an hour. Why aren't things better? You got what you wanted. The unions were all screaming for the $15. Well, you got what you wanted. Why isn't it better? And you just don't find anybody held accountable. They're calling what Donald Trump is doing retribution, and that he's weaponizing government against his enemies. And I think really what they're doing is they're going to try and hold people accountable for the things that they did that were either illegal or marginally legal to try to get what they wanted. Here comes the truth train, right on time. But it's time that people begin to be held accountable for what they've done.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we're seeing it. Like I said, I've watched a lot of podcasts where they've made these major arrests. A lot of it is involved with drug traffic. Absolutely. There's been so much drug traffic in this country, huge amounts of drugs, but they're choking off what's going on with the Venezuela boats and so on. They're choking off the supply of drugs into the country. They become much more ambitious to track down and arrest and do away with these criminal elements that are either making drugs, selling drugs, or promoting drugs, and so on. So I think that's that's going to show itself as time goes on. The drug addicts are going to have two things. Number one, a harder time finding drugs. Number two, the cost is going to escalate. Because as the supply becomes less and less, guess what happens? The price goes up.
Oh, yeah.
So your so-called $5 baggie or whatever it is now going to be a $10 baggie.
Yeah, or more.
Or more, and so on. And what's going to happen within the ranks, too, you've got drugs for your people. I don't have any, so I'm going to come and take my drugs that I need from you. So you're going to see a lot of what I call the old crime family stuff taking place.
Drug on drug crime.
They're going to start killing each other to get their supply of drugs. So there's a lot that's going on. A lot of it doesn't get publicized unless you happen to watch venues that talk about it. But the major networks, which I don't watch anyhow, but they will not talk about any of this stuff. They don't talk about the crime that's being eliminated and the people that are being arrested, the people that are being charged. But it's happening.
See, I have given up on any kind of mainstream news at all. I don't watch any of that anymore.
No.
I don't know people who do. People who I would not ever expect to watch podcasts are telling me they're watching podcasts. I hope you'll share this podcast with them.
All the time. I watch the podcast. If I want to know what's really going on, there are certain podcasters I'll watch because I know they're pretty straight and pretty straightforward.
And that makes it harder to maintain the narrative because podcasters begin to look at things that they themselves want to see. Like, for instance, I just saw that homeschooling has now hit record numbers in Florida. Mm-hmm. The growth rate is at 5.4%, which is 3 times what it was the pre-pandemic rate, that more and more people are pulling their kids out of government schools. In the meantime, the Department of Education has begun to dismantle itself.
Yes.
I saw where they've stopped $31 billion in grants. Mm-hmm. They're returning education to the states. The Department of Health and Human Services is taking over some of the grant application. I'm waiting for them to turn over the student loan program back to the private sector. That'll be it.
Well, the one thing that I'm kind of concerned about is our education rate in this country has gone downhill for the last 30, 40 years. Okay, dramatically gone downhill. We used to be near the top. Now we're almost at the bottom, and so on. When you start saying to a state like, say, California, New York, Illinois, you're not going to give them their share of the education department budget, which is, let's pick a number. Let's say it's $10 billion you give to New York State. They're already a wacko state to begin with. The education is horrible in these blue states more than any place else. So you're going to see they're going to now have the money to run the department the way they want to. I feel sorry for the people that have kids in those schools.
If they don't pull them out.
Because they're going to be indoctrinated. But and here's the other thing. What Obama did, his very first act, what he did when he was being president the first time, was eliminate the money to give children in Washington, D.C. the right to go to, a private school, okay, and whatnot. That was the first move he made and whatnot. So the Democrats do not have the same care or concern about education that the red states have. And I think that is going to really tell itself when you start giving them money to run their own education.
And that's why when these midterms come up, you've got to find out what your congressional people believe and what you are going to be able to do in these states, because I think the red states are continuing. Not everybody who leaves New York anymore is coming to Florida.
No.
They're looking to the Carolinas. They're looking at Georgia. They're looking at Alabama. They're looking at other states. It's not only just in Florida.
Sorry to say, though, that North Carolina has really gone off the rails. If you look at the crime rate that is escalated in North Carolina, I lived in North Carolina for a few years, okay, and so on. So North Carolina used to be a conservative state. It is no longer a conservative
well, that's why
state.
if you have people who are fleeing, if they are fleeing these deep blue states, and we've talked about this in the past, you don't have to worry about them bringing their ways. They're trying to escape what's happening here. So I think it may turn some of these purple states back red again.
Well, I hope so, because like I said, for the longest time, North Carolina was considered to be, the Southern Belt, if you will. It is physically, but as far as how the state's been run with Democratic administrations, not good at all. And that's really showed itself here recently with the number of high crime rates that have taken place in North Carolina cities.
And some of the things that we have to do is support some of the things that the president wants to do. Like, for instance, he wants to allow offshore drilling here off 100 miles off the coast of Florida. Governor DeSantis is not a big fan of that.
No.
But, if this is going to help with and other than that one very minute spill that they had in the Gulf, and they made a huge deal out of it. It was made it a lot worse than it really was. This has been a very safe operation, and it's going to be up to us to help, at least at the short term, to help with some of these things. To say, yes, we're up and behind this, and to look for America First candidates to maybe challenge some of these people. And even right here in Highlands County, I was stunned to hear that they were going to take tourist tax dollars, spend them on local projects, and then expect the taxpayers to pick up the tab for it and reimbursed. We were told that the tourist tax was for people who were coming here for tourist activities, whether it was to watch the 12 hours of Sebring, or to come to an art festival, or to come and enjoy the warm weather such as it is, that we were going to take that money from the heads and beds and use it to prosper ourselves. And it turns out that's not what they want to do with it. It's what they want to do with it is use it as a they want to say that they use the money from the tourist tax, but then they want to take general fund money and put it back in there. What kind of craziness is that?
Well, there again, if you go back to what we talked about yesterday, and that was the advent of what's been found under the DOGE program here in Florida. Okay, they have found so far a large pot of money that is spent on nothing that has to do with running that community. It's not an essential service. So I think if the governor continues to have Angolia go out and investigate the other counties that are suspected to have, money that they're spending that's not necessary, and find that, I think that's going to be a good thing. And it's going to be hard pressed, I think, for the states to try and say, well, we've got to have this program and that program when it has nothing to do with actually running that county.
One of the problems is finding good people to run for office, because most of the good people don't want to put up with all of what it takes. And we talked yesterday about Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving. One is that she got tired of the threats against her family.
Yep.
And the tolerant left has shown that violence is never off the table. I mean, witness Charlie Kirk, witness the attempts on Donald Trump's life. If they can't get what they want by other means, they'll do it by violence.
Well, that's it, and we've seen that. We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen quite a bit lately. There's been some really bad situations. A lot of people have received death threats, and some have made attempts at it. And we've got, as we talked yesterday, there are a lot of wacko people out on the street.
Yes.
And it doesn't take much for these wacko people. If you put them up to something, how did this, there seems to be some reluctance, and I don't know why, to come forward with, what was the name? Crook, the guy that tried to assassinate Trump.
Thomas Matthew Crooks.
Right.
We had Kash Patel and Dan Bongino both saying, oh no, there was no foreign influence here. We're back to the lone gunman thing. And we've had the lone gunman so many times that it now reminds me very much of the boy who cried wolf. I am really ready to put my tinfoil hat on, because at some point, you've got to say that they were financed by someone that this Charlie Kirk, the kid now his name goes away on me.
Was that Crooks, or was that the guy that tried to assassinate Trump?
I thought that was the guy trying to assassinate Trump.
Yeah.
But I'm just telling you that there's the truth train. Maybe they'll bring us some truth. But at any rate, it's time. It's time really for us to begin to unpack some of this stuff and find out, because the Chinese have already said that we're under unlimited warfare. And I don't know whether that means that they've got shell people who will help finance this kind of thing, but they love chaos because out of chaos comes order, and the order is more laws by the government. Out of 9/11, what do we get? The Patriot Act, which has really been used against Americans in lock, stock, and barrel.
Yep, absolutely. So I think it's it's going to be very interesting going forward. Number one, you have to have security. That's the number one security, whether it's local, state, or federal. We've got to have security. And I think our armed forces, as much as the Democrats last week tried to berate them and say, walk off the job if you don't like the rules that are coming down from the president.
Don't obey a lawful or what they called it. And they pinned that one woman and that one senator says, well, what's an unlawful order? Mm-hmm. And she says, well, we haven't seen any of those yet. And, well, what are you telling them to do? And they're backpedaling pretty hard from this because telling people not to obey the rules of the commander in chief, they may not have. During World War II, there's probably a lot of guys that didn't want to get sent to the Pacific Theater, but that's what the order said.
Well, and the thing of it is that Trump came out and said, sedition. The penalty for sedition can include up to death.
He said back in the olden days, that's what they did.
And of course, they ran up and said, Trump's going to kill us. Trump's going to kill us. All six of them. They went wacko immediately and said, he's going to kill us. There's no doubt about it. So, I mean, this is the insanity. Again, why would you ever think it was right to make a film clip, of yourself saying, oh, you guys don't like what's being said by the commander? Just quit, go off the job. You don't need to do it. You don't need to carry out that order. Well, yes, you do. It's a legal order, all right? And unless something is dramatically wrong with that order, you have to follow that order.
These are United States senators who have sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
They took an oath of office, as did all the military guys and gals.
Yep, absolutely. And so on. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where that goes. I think, like I said earlier, the Republicans came out with their own video of Republican senators and House people that were in the military and came out and said, essentially, look, the order is the order, okay? And you have to obey a justifiable order and so on. You cannot just dismiss it and walk off the job. And this was a terrible thing for our opponents to say and to try to lead soldiers down that road.
It's bad enough for normal American citizens to say something like that. I think it's exponentially worse for a senator to say something like that.
Well, it is.
Even if you don't like the president, for crying out loud.
Well, and none of them do. It's obvious.
Oh, they hate him.
And Kelly, the guy who was the former astronaut, like somebody said, and I believe it, he spent too much time in outer space, okay? And that's why he says the things that he does. He envisions himself, I think, as some kind of a presidential candidate, but he's no more presidential candidate than I am, and so on. So we'll see what happens going forward, but I hope this is the end of that crazy talk, because that's exactly what it is. And all it does is stir the pot. That's all it does. It rattles the crazies and gets them riled up, and they go out and they say and do crazy things.
Yes, and we've seen some of the crazy things.
Oh, well, look at what's happened with ICE and the deportation of these people around the country, especially in a place like Chicago and the crate in Portland, Oregon. It's just off the chart insanity.
Well, Ashley Moody there's a thing called the HALO law. Mm-hmm. And the HALO law is really made for first responders, firefighters, EMTs, that when people are told to stand back, they have to stand back 25 feet.
Yes.
Which gives them a chance to do their job, to squirt water on the fire, to provide EMS services. They want to put that on ice now, where if you're told to stand back, you have to be back 25 feet.
Well, if you watch a lot of these videos of ICE in action trying to do their job, and they're trying to, number one, get somebody down on the ground so they put handcuffs on them. I mean, the people there they're like 2 feet away with their camera in their face, screaming at them while they're trying to do their job. And then they wonder why there's confrontations take place, or they use tear gas or whatever it is. You have to have some degree of control over the mob in order to get your job done. And you're in danger. I mean, you are in danger.
It's sad when you have to have police officers out protecting firefighters and EMTs.
Yes. And we've seen that even before this, but now it's even doubly true with the areas where ICE and the FBI and the rest of them have gone in to either control crime or arrest illegals that are in here illegally and get them off the street.
Again, it's accountability. And it was amazing how things calmed down when Donald Trump sent the National Guard in to take care of Washington, D.C.
Yes.
When there were heavily armed individuals on the street corners and bad things could happen quickly. People could walk down the street. There was not a problem at all. It was amazing. But it's so sad that we have deteriorated to that point where that's what it's going to take.
Well, that's it. I mean, you got the local officials who are sanctuary cities or sanctuary states. All they're out there for is to fight ICE at every corner, to fight ICE, not allow them to do their job, or make it so hard that other things happen in the course of trying to do their job.
Well, they're protecting their voter base.
Well, yes. I mean, that, but however, in some of these cases, I think they're paid mobs too. They're paid to come into this community, all right, make their demonstrations, scream and holler, show their signs, jump up and down, and so on, because somebody's funding on them. And then do they get on the bus and they go to the next city and do it all over again? And some of these people are paid professional protesters.
Yeah, and there's one guy, and again, I can't remember his name. I'm sad. But there are a couple, three guys, and they make it their business to go to these rallies. They become journalists. They're independent journalists, and they begin to talk to these people, and they out them, and they say, "Why, this is a professional protester who gets." He says, "I can't tell you how much it is, but it's between $80,000 and $115,000 a year. They don't have to work. Whatever rally they go to, they just show up there, and they're paid to show up." So let's say there's a big rally in Highlands County, and let's say they have 150 people show up. Were any of them paid? Well, not by us, but these people just magically show up. Are they local people? Well, I don't know. I've never seen them before. That doesn't mean they don't live in Sun Lake or Loretta or Spring, just because I haven't seen them before.
Yep.
And they have paid protesters who show up at whatever protest they need to have, to make it, to get the numbers up, and they get other people kind of whooped up to come, and I've talked about ways that we could undo some of that stuff if we wanted to.
From what I saw when they had the so-called No Kings rally here a month or so ago, there was obvious, that crowd was so large, it was obvious that it wasn't spontaneous. Okay. Because I've never seen a spontaneous crowd in Highlands County in my life in 20 years.
No.
That was as big as that one. So I think the next time there is one of those, if they have one, I think we need to try and do a little investigative, be part of it in a way that we're there to gather information.
Yes.
Okay. And so on, just to question people, talk to people and see,
where are you from?
Yeah. Where are you from? Okay. How did you get
I live
here?
in Avon Park. Where do you live?
Right. And so on. So I think we need to do that because it's obvious that crowd was bigger than anything I've ever seen.
And they only show up for those things, and then they don't show up again.
No. So anyhow, that was just the experience that we had with them earlier this year.
By the way, before we get to the end of the program, I want to put in a little plug for my buddy Tommy Brandt. You may have seen you may have heard the interview that I did with him called "Spreading Gospel 6 Strings at a Time." He's a minister. He is an evangelist. He goes out to the rodeos, and he has been hacked, and all the money that he has raised to do this operation, it's just gone. And his bank, which I will not mention their name on the air, but it's a bank that I don't have any use for whatsoever, has just told him, "Hey, too bad, pal, it's gone." And I thought we had safeguards, and it seems to be, if you would look at the numbers, it would seem to be a substantial amount of money, but it cost him a substantial amount of money to go. He spends the entire summer going all over the Oklahoma, Alabama, up into the Northeast, up into Wisconsin, into Ohio. I mean, he's just all over everywhere, and it takes a great deal of money to go ahead and run this operation around the country in saving souls. And he had had some money put back, because now it's coming into the winter time, and he doesn't do as many many things in Florida as he does around the country, and they gave him a big goose egg. So if you want to look at Cowboy Outreach Ministries, Cowboy Outreach America, Cowboy Outreach America, Tommy Brandt, Brandt. But if you could help Tommy, I consider it a personal favor. He's gonna get I just talked to him earlier this week, and he's gonna get a recovery bank account put in where he can take the donations, because he says we owe people a lot of money for the venues that we were at, for the operation that we've done. He says we owe people money and we want to make sure they get paid, And I said, are you good for Thanksgiving dinner? He says, no, we're good for Thanksgiving dinner. I said, okay, as long as you're good for Thanksgiving dinner. But while he was on the road, he has his toter home had a bad, one of the tires exploded, tore up the fender and the front, the headlamps and all that stuff. And he's now over the winter going to try to get everything put back together. So if you could look at the Cowboy Outreach America or Tommy Brandt, Brandt, and help him out, that we'd appreciate that very much. Yep. Because as we've talked about, this is the time that it's going to be up to us, because to save the country, what we need to do first is give the gospel of Jesus Christ and get people back into church. And I'm hoping that our church is going to 2 services now. The people are starting to come in. Independent Baptist Church of Sebring, wonderful place. If you want to come sit by us, we still have 2 seats by us. But I would say if you want to make sure that during Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year, this is the time to spread the gospel and to begin to talk about America first, and to try to give some products made in America. Mm-hmm. We always look at where it's made, and there's made in America, there's designed in America, and there's assembled in America. And you want made in America if you can find it, and help the country get back on track. So.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else we're missing here?
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit today on the local situation, the state situation, which is the proposed property tax elimination, which I think is going to become a very hot issue over the next 12 months and so on. And we'll see how it goes. And I'm going to try and find out more information about it. But, right now, from what I understand and what I learned this weekend about it, I think it's something that could succeed, but I think there are going to be a lot of people that don't want it to succeed. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that goes and see what the outcome is. You have to get 60% of the vote next November, because it's going to be on a ballot as a constitutional amendment. So I think it'd be, but if we had 3 million people come to the state in the last 10 years with what we have now, and you put this into place, you tell people the state has no income tax and no property tax, watch the U-Hauls head this way, okay? They will head this way. They're coming down the road. Every other vehicle you see is going to be a U-Haul, okay? So.
Should be interesting. John,
very interesting.
John, thanks so much. You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded at the Ridge Flora Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. Any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just put them in the comments below, or you can send us an email at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Check out the YouTube page here. Dailies, we're going to try to put up something new each and every day, especially we're going to have something special tomorrow on Thursday. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram as well. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, Barry Foster and John Larsen, we'll see you next time.